Hey, Chris, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, man. I got to be honest with you. This is awesome to be able to be back on the mics. We're kind of socially distanced.
We're probably not
Maybe not
within the guidelines.
We're not like Trump was 12 foot away on the reporter the other day. If you happen to see that, they were like, it was weird. He's doing his interview and it's like across the different sides of the room. Did you have to catch that?
I didn't see that one.
Yeah,
no.
We're not quite that, but we are socially distanced. Welcome to episode 86, Mr. Graves. What do you think about pushing up almost to 90?
I was thinking the other day we're getting close to 100.
Right? We got to do something special on 100 or something. Through a Therapist's eyes, we invite you to see the world, as always, through the lens of a mental health and substance abuse therapist. The goal still to create emotional growth through the medium of this podcast, being aware it's not the delivery of therapy services in any way, and feedback and discussion is definitely looked for on throughatherapistseyes.com. They got to hit the podcast blog tab. We might be changing some of the internet website page stuff soon, huh?
Perhaps.
I think we got to put a book thing on there, a coaching thing on there, and some different neat stuff.
Yeah, we got some interesting stuff happening soon.
The
Very
human
soon.
emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. Man, we have done a lot of group interviews lately as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that. It's kind of neat to have added voices on here. This one's kind of cool for me. You know why?
Why is that?
You remember I'm a published author?
Yeah, I haven't seen a book yet, so I don't know if you are or not. You keep saying that, but I don't
It's
know.
coming, man. You know about my grammar ability, right?
Oh, I hope you have a proofreader.
I got better than that, man. I got way better than that. I'm going to prove it because the person who made it actually sound all right is actually with us tonight, sir. Miss Courtney Donelson and her husband, Mark.
Okay.
We have some guests for the show this week. Courtney and Mark, welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. How are y'all tonight?
Go ahead.
We're doing great.
Yeah, we're doing
Thanks for that intro. And you know what? Your grammar when you speak is spot on. So
So much better than the writing, right? I mean, the spelling, and I mean, it's terrible.
There are so many people on Facebook Live that are seeing me be crushed right now by these people, man. I tell you.
I get frustrated trying to edit Chris's social media posts, so I can't imagine being the first reader of his book.
No.
She red inked it pretty well, man. She red inked it pretty well. We have Courtney and Mark Donelson in way of introducing, and guys, listen if I leave anything out. Craig, these guys have been married for over 2 decades. Can you believe that?
Oh, congratulations.
Right. 21 years of marriage with 2 kiddos, age 15 and 11, both adopted internationally. I wish we'd do a show on that, guys. You got to have you back a few times. They are speakers and trained marriage mentors through the Basic Idea Ministry. I guess that is based in Georgia, facilitating small groups and weekend intensives for couples at all stages of marriage, from engaged relationships to in crisis relationships. As I said, she is also the best editor ever at Vocem Editing. I wrote that. You see that in mobile, man. Best editing ever. She does ghostwriting and editing of documents, books. There's a lot of people that want to, engage in book writing, and she can actually make you help it come alive. I can attest to that. Mr. Mark, what did we miss out with you, man? Is there anything I missed? Courtney, who are you guys, and what do you do? What makes you guys, you guys?
Well, like you said, we've been married for over 2 decades. We were married I guess kind of early, right out of college, age 23. Barely able to toast at our wedding, but and then Mark, he's more in training and HR and
I'm in corporate training, and in the more impressive courts introduction gets, the closer I get to my ultimate job title, which is a trophy husband. So that is what ultimately where I want to land. And so the more that she does and the more books that she edits, the closer I get to that. So I'm looking forward to those days.
That's funny, man. I got a friend, my wife's best friend husband, put a Facebook post out there recently. Hey buddy, I saw that post. He's like, man, it's really hard to be a trophy husband. It's like, boom. That's awesome. So you guys work with marriages, and the topic today is your idea, Miss Donelson. Actually, you hooked us up and approached it. I'm so glad because it fit perfectly. Craig wanted to do some coronavirus pandemic related topic shows, and we've kind of strung a few together. For the audience, we did just a therapist take on coronavirus. What else did we do, Craig? We did the sex pornography.
Yeah, and we've also got a work from home episode coming out.
Yep. Okay. So, and today later on we're going to release in a couple of days sort of my sound off on my concern with kids. Man, I'm really getting concerned about kids. And also we're going to have some fun with talking about sports and what it does for us and with us. But boy, one of the big things that's happening in this quarantine environment, Courtney, it was a great topic idea. Being able to talk about marriage in the quarantine environment, because I'll tell you what, we're not all sitting at home playing Parcheesi, just having fun.
No. In fact, the idea came when Mark gave me a statistic about how busy divorce attorneys are right now. So I don't know where you heard that.
Yeah, it was really, it was a single article, and this was, very early in the stay-at-home orders. And they were talking about all the businesses that were going down or businesses that were decreasing and seeing lower turnout numbers, but some businesses were booming, and divorce lawyers were actually right near the top of that list, and just how busy they were. And my first thought was, like, it's only been stay at home for like 2 weeks. Did things go that badly that quickly? And if so, what are things going to look like, a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road if this continues? It was eye-opening, and I hadn't really thought about it because, but when it started for us, we thought, all right, like, this is okay. We like hanging out together. So we're like, all right, this is okay. We can handle this.
Yeah, I can't. We're not really a statistics show, but I know for a fact in talking some people that do law and all. I mean, it's very much it's busy for those guys. People are. I can tell you in my therapy office, people are really struggling with marital battles and fights and disagreements. I mean, you just think of the picture, right? I mean, you're used to having some space and some distance naturally provided for by work. And, you're now home all day long. You absolutely got your kids. They're up in your grill constantly. People, right? I mean, you're expected to be a teacher and manage the workflow that usually is done by an entire full-time person, or actually an entire staff of full-time people. I mean, this is all going on in our homes. It's, for people that are out there struggling, I want to say as a therapist, like, you're not losing it alone. You're with the vast majority of the public, right? I mean, have you guys been hearing any of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, the point that we want to kind of start with is that we are, if three-dimensional beings, if you will. There's this, physical dimension where we're constantly with each other. And then there's, for those who have a faith or a spiritual component, there's that spiritual connection that you have with your spouse. But then there's this relational and friendship or soul-based connection that you have, where all your feelings and thoughts and your choices kind of lay. And that's the connection that we're really kind of worried about with a lot of these spouses.
Yeah. What kind of connections are people having, or struggling with? I mean, do you guys kind of talk to, married couples as part of your coaching and, part of the process and stuff for you guys? Like, do you regularly engage or support?
Yeah. So we'll run, we have a curriculum that we take people through that we were trained in. And so that's and we'll either do that through, weekly meetings for a couple months, or we'll do everything in a weekend and an intensive. But, we're, because of that training and that curriculum, our ears are always open for couples that are struggling, and, whether it's, people we meet at church or through friends, or, friends of ours that we've had for years. They're like, we're really, we're struggling, or we just, we've been trained to listen for certain cues, and that's really where where a lot of those conversations start.
Yeah, we hear a lot either, we're either arguing a lot or we just feel like roommates, like we're just ships passing in the night. And that's what we hear real often.
Right.
Yeah. Is that just in general or more so in the past month and a half?
More so.
More so.
Yeah. I've received, obviously with social distancing, we're not hanging out with our friends or going to church right now or workplaces, but just the amount of texts or even social media posts or, emails, things like that are coming in have increased. There's definitely a tick up.
A ramp up, a monstrous zoom up, a rocket ship, maybe, right? I mean, it's people, like I said, people are struggling out there. So let's give them some things to think about. With some of the things that you kind of go through. I was kind of intrigued by this idea that, we're three-dimensional. There's something cool about the number 3, isn't it? I mean, it seems to come up a lot. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah. So we learned this through the training that we went through. And basically when we get married, we connect on this physical level, right? We have these physical beings, the bodies that you see, the 5 senses that we have. And then we have this relational component, which is really the friendship component. And if you're missing on any 3 of these levels, and then you have the spiritual component as well, if you're missing on any 3 levels, then you're going to feel something amiss in your relationship. But often, the physical component is tangible. It's easy to kind of see. It's, holding hands, it's the kissing, it's the hugging, things like that. But the relational component, that soul component, friendship component, it's hard to see. It's hard to put your hands around. And so that's where a lot of people kind of, I think, are missing, or the ships passing in the night is on that level.
Yeah. She's looking at you, Mark. What do you think about the 3-dimensional piece? That's a nonverbal cue. You're up, bro.
And I mean, I don't know much to add there. I mean, that's exactly the way we, how we approach things. But even within that friendship or that relational piece, there's 3 pieces in there of, it's our thoughts, it's our feelings, and it's our decisions. And really how each of those feeds the other. So, if you're feeling stressed or, you're feeling overwhelmed emotionally, that's going to trigger some thoughts in your head of, I need some space. I need to, you get short tempered. That's going to trigger some of your decision making of, should I go downstairs and help make dinner and help with the kids, or no, I'm just going to lock myself in this room for quiet for the next 30 minutes, realizing, oh, now your spouse is downstairs with the kids for another 30 minutes. And, their emotions
Not that this ever happens in our house.
I'm not picking up at all, ever, right?
But
yeah. I tell you, I think that I want to kind of chime in. I hear you kind of saying, making decisions on these basic dimensions, the physical and the relational and the spiritual. I mean, I think that's a cool way of looking at it. What I feel like I want to bring into the equation that I have found dramatically important in any marriage discussion is these guys. Craig, you remember talking about Mr. John Gottman?
I do.
Yeah. What do you recall from that?
He's the EFT guy, right?
Right. There's a guy, and episode 11 is, matter of fact, dude, we totally need to redo the episode 11. We were new into doing this. It was one of the most important ones. I wanted to jump on it, but listening audience, we're gonna redo that one in my mind's eye soon, because he identified, Courtney and Mark, an amazing way that transformed the way I do marital counseling. And I'm going to give the 5-second or the Cliff Note version, because he actually wired people up and he took heart rates and blood pressure and sweat glands, and all he did is he laid out conversations in what he called the love lab. Have you ever heard of this guy, Courtney? No? Okay. Yeah. And so he just measured all these vitals and whatnot while people were talking and saw the patterns, looked for the foundational patterns that he could observably see. And what he came down to are basically the cycles that we get into that are I mean, they nail the foundational patterns that you're looking at when you're trying to connect physically or when you're trying to connect relationally or spiritually on these three dimensions that you guys are talking about. And he identified two specific insecurities, one abandonment and the other one engulfment, right? The abandonment has behaviors to feel safe in attachment that are pursuing behaviors, right? The engulfment insecurity folks have behaviors associated to attachment in close relationships that are withdrawing patterns of behavior. So you got the abandonment people that pursue, and you got the engulfment people that withdraw. And you have three types of relationships you can have, obviously. Two people that are in the engulfment, which is very rare. It's dead. You know,
It happens.
Nothing's going on at all. And then you got the crazy thing when two abandonment people are clapping at each other. I mean, holy cow, it's a love fest when it's going on, but when it's not going on, it's bad. An overwhelming majority of the time, you get somebody that's completely opposite. One person's grabbing to be close, desperately to feel emotionally safe, and the other's like totally withdrawing and shutting down, putting up walls so they can feel emotionally safe. I'm telling you, Gottman nailed it when he identified those things. And so I'm curious, as you look at the relational of physical and the relational of friendship and then the connection spiritually, as you were listening to that, how does that connect on the three dimensions?
Yeah, it connects really well. And so through what we do, we basically know of 30 relational needs. So, and really, I'm pretty confident that if you mapped all 30 of these relational needs, they're going to fall into one of those two camps that you just talked about. And really, they're needs that we all have, and we all have them in different values. We prioritize them differently, but we all have them. And they, examples would be, affection, approval, attention, support, and for Court, her big needs are, support is one of her biggest needs. For me, one of my biggest needs is respect. And we have definitely seen in these times, in the COVID times that some of those needs have shifted. So for example, appreciation, security, support, we have seen those start to rise to the top because, look, we both need to support each other because we're two jobs, working at home, two kids, and it's been clear that we care more about their schoolwork than they do.
There's a lot going on that level, brother. I know, right?
And so, and kind of what you said is, all right, we suddenly have 4 people under this house and we're all trying to do more than what we used to. So we really need to support each other. And so even going back to that example, all right, while I want to stay upstairs and kind of have 30 minutes of quiet, that's not supporting Court. And that's not helping her and showing her that, look, I'm here for you. We're in this together. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you want to add to that, but for me, I mean, we break it down a little further than those two camps, but I'm sure that the 30 would map back up really clearly if we spent 5 minutes to.
Yeah. And my thought is, one of those relational needs is security. So as you were saying, Chris, when we're not feeling secure or at peace, or that there's harmony with, under this roof, then each of us respond in both of those camps that you mentioned. Yeah. I'm the, okay, let's go at it. And he's the, let me run away and hide. So
it's funny that people struggle sometimes in knowing themselves. I'll get a lot of times the idea that I do both. That's what I thought you were saying, but you're kind of like saying, no, it's clear. Sometimes so the listening audience understands it's really, really clear and you can easily pick this stuff out. Other times it's kind of like, I don't know, man, I do both. Well, you do too. And I don't, and you really have to kind of walk through and figure it out, because the key here is when things are hot, When we feel wired, when we're really stressed, we're needing that attachment, right? We're needing that connection. And that's when our insecurities start popping, right? And so, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and along with that, what we've realized is a lot of the times that one of us gets frustrated or gets angry or something doesn't, sets us off, it's usually pretty easy to track it back to one of these relational needs isn't being met. So if Court's not feeling supported, if she feels like I'm kind of, out on my own and not helping with the house stuff or with the kids' school stuff, it usually comes out as anger. And while
I don't know what he's talking about.
I'm going to kill him, Craig.
I mean, if I feel that, she's not respecting kind of or not appreciating, that's another one of my big needs is feeling appreciated. And so if I feel unappreciated and unrespected, I mean, I don't yell, but I'll act like a 4-year-old. That's really where I go. I mean, I'll just kind of be a jerk. But it's usually because one of those relational needs are not being met. And so that's what we try to work with couples on, is to recognize, hey, when your spouse is angry or your spouse is upset, it's not, try to see past the anger and the frustration and the emotion and look to, all right, what's driving that?
Yeah. So we have a phrase for that. It's, minister to the pain rather than react to the behavior that you're seeing. And so when I'm getting angry, as he says, right? Can you see that, Chris? Can you see me being angry? I mean,
Courtney, I do not. I'm gonna be honest with you, Mark. Dude, she is nothing but supportive, bro. No. Did I do okay, Courtney? Is that okay?
Once you get that way, there's usually a pretty good reason, and I'm usually at the core of it. So,
yeah. Got you.
I gotta admit, the kids call me scary mommy at times.
Well, you got to put your mommy hat on. Absolutely, the daddy stare and the mommy look. We got our skills, kids. Let me get back on track. And I want to talk about how the COVID specific situation is affecting those relational dimensions, but you seem to kind of, I'm curious if it's true and why it's so. Of the 3 dimensions there, the spiritual, the physical, and the relational, you seem to focus on the relational. Is that true? And first off, and if so, why?
Yeah, I think it's true because that's where all of our, like Mark said, that relational component or dimension that we have has 3 sections. It's our thoughts, what goes in our mind. It's our feelings or emotions, and then it's our choices. And it's those feelings and emotions right now that are just being hit constantly on social media, or if you watch the news, or the fear factor. You go out and you see the masks on everyone, and you wonder if things are going to go back to normal, and you've lost your job. So your feelings right now are just on like 1,000%, and
right.
So it's going to affect everything else in that relational component, which is how we typically connect first to our spouses.
Right. Yeah. I think I get that. It's first of all, it's being destroyed right now by all of the stress. I mean, I think I shared on the show, it's funny, I do therapy all day long, and people wonder, like, how do you handle talking about people's problems all day? I get that question all the time. Like, I don't know. I mean, you just learn how to kind of compartmentalize that, and it doesn't bother you. But boy, man, when this COVID, remember I was talking about it, Craig, I think, the first couple of weeks, man, when this all hit, I mean, I'm licking the floor when I'm leaving my office, because I'm just like, all of my own emotions are sitting there. Like, what do you mean? I'm sitting there making decisions about how many chairs to have in my lobby, and, I shake people's hand. I mean, oh my God, everybody had a run on Lysol. Well, I need it for my business. Where am I going to get this? Should I wipe down every day? What protocol should I put in for my staff? Well, am I going to get sick? I don't want to get my mom sick. I mean, there's all this stuff going on. Right. And we're supposed to do all the normal stuff as well that we've struggled with before this.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things that kind of all those relational needs tie back to, and kind of where you're where I think you're going is, we try to simplify it as much as we can. And instead of like, now I have to do all this stuff on top of all this other stuff that I've always done. We try to break it down from a relational standpoint of, my role as the husband is to help Court feel a little less alone every day. And Court's role as a wife is to make me feel a little less alone each day. And that could look completely different. Sometimes it's the laundry list. Sometimes, it's, look, I'm going to do the dishes. Sometimes it's, I'm going to pick her up her tea, her chai tea at her favorite coffee place. Where, not being in this situation, it may be, look, we're going for date night, or we're doing, all these different things. Sometimes in these more stressful situations and stressful times, it's the little things that you can really boil it down to much smaller support and much smaller ways to just let her know that, look, I'm here, you're not in this by yourself. We're going to figure this out. Don't know how, but we're going to figure this out. And we'll be okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of my, kind of go-to things, because it's pretty easy, and I'm all about easy most of the time, is
right.
A dry erase marker message on her bathroom mirror in the morning. Just saying, hey, thinking of you, love you. Just so that, when she gets up, the first thing she sees is, okay, like, somebody's thinking about me. It's a little thing. It takes me longer to think of what I'm going to write than actually to write it on the mirror. But I know that she now knows, look, I'm with you today, regardless of however I'm going to screw up today, intentionally, unintentionally, however I'm going to mess up, later on in the day, I'm still there with her.
Yeah, I think that's the key, because I think everyone's security is kind of low right now. Mm-hmm. I think harmony is low. I think peace is low. And so just knowing that there's someone who is on your side, especially knowing that person supposedly is the closest one to you, right? I think knowing that you're a little less alone because of them is just sometimes all it takes to get through the day of all the bad news or all the stress that we're feeling from what's happening in the world.
Yeah, because when we got married, I mean, my thought was, look, there's this huge laundry list that you've got to do. I've got to be provider, I've got to be the husband, I've got to be, protector, all this stuff. And then, to throw all the, the COVID support on top of that. I mean, for me, I found it really overwhelming. Like, how in the world am I going to do all this?
Right.
Really boil down to, look, just make her feel less alone. I can figure out how to do that every day.
It's funny that you say that, Mark, because that was kind of what I saw on this idea of the relational dimension and how it's impacted with the stay-at-home realities that we have now. Just like you were saying, I mean, there's an important part of a marriage, I feel like, and when you're dealing with marriage counseling, being able to see ourselves as a couple is really important. Like, we do a lot in the mental health world with visualization and how you see things, what your perception is. And that gets attacked by so many ways, right? By Mark, what you were just saying, like, there's so much that I've got to do anyway, right from the get-go when you get married. And I think women, just like us men, Mark, I mean, they have been taught since they were little girls, I'm supposed to be this and that and the next and this, and you got your fingers going all. Well, dudes get the same thing too. I'm supposed to, like, protect and provide and, and it's like, oh, how do I do this? So, in the eyes of us that are ourselves that are married, and then in the eyes of the people that are around us, do we have that visualization? Do we have those roles clear? Because we're also a mom or a dad or a sister and an employer, and these different roles that we have to visualize that reality of being an us too, by the way. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really goes back to, for me, it was, again, just how can I make this simple? Because,
I think expectations get out of hand. Mm-hmm. And I think that adds stress to the marriage. If you have all these expectations, not only of your partner, but of yourself and of what marriage should even look like in the first place. And then it's just impossible to meet all those expectations. And so to break it down to, what can I do to help him feel less alone today? And then what are his top 3 relational needs that I can hit, easily? And then it's the point of, when 2 become 1, having some type of purpose together, right? So that you're a team, so that you can accomplish things and you can dream together and you can look past the present and look towards, something better.
And I think, we did an episode, Craig, you remember episode 20, The Lost Decade. Do you remember what that was? Can you give a synopsis? Do you remember?
Yeah. So Lost Decade was the episode where you talked about how we lose ourselves in parenting for 10 years or so till the kids are out of that stage.
Yeah. And I actually got to thinking about that. I mean, age, I actually look at Marc and Courtney, the idea of when your oldest kid is age 4 to 14, just that cycle time frame, you just lose yourself in that role, man, and you lose yourself in all of those tasks. I mean, it's interesting, going by just my silly little theory there with the lost decade and specific ages, your kids are age 15 and 11. You're just now kind of coming out of that space where it's like, whoa, yeah, like there really is an us. But think about that from the aspect of COVID.
Right.
It just, I mean, this is a real thought as I'm talking about it right now. This has just exploded for people that have those ages of those kids. How do you get to be a couple when you've got a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old literally running in the house while you're in what I call the lost decade in episode 20? I mean, can you imagine that?
Yeah, it's really hard to be intentional when you have kids that age to set time aside for you. And it's probably not news or any new information that, if really your marriage should be the most important relationship and then parenting relationship. But the reality is that hardly ever happens during those ages.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, for us, when our kids were that age, we had to be so intentional.
We even named a night. We named a night Conversation Night.
Right.
Every week.
That's a great tip. Yeah.
We turned off the TV. We put our phones away. We put the kids to bed at like 6 p.m.
Okay, Mark, here's a test, buddy. I'm gonna set you up. I'm sorry, man. He's gonna crucify me. I don't even know this guy. So what day of the week was Conversation? Oh, he nailed it. He already got it. What was it?
Wednesday.
All right, Wednesday nights. Good, man.
So that was one of the tactics that we used, but we did other small things that we still do to this day. That our 15-year-old stays up as late as we do, but once the younger one goes to bed, it's not uncommon for me to run out and grab ice cream somewhere, run out to Dairy Queen and come back, and we'll just eat ice cream by ourselves on the couch. And when both kids were younger, we just did it without them and we were fine. Now we do it in front of our 15-year-old. He's like, do I get any? Like, no. This is
Absolutely not, buddy.
When you get to be our age, you can do it. But it's even just little things like that it's things that we do together that helps that
friendship.
Yeah, that helps that friendship, that keeps us laughing, that even just gives us an escape from what's taken place since 7 o'clock that morning when the kids woke up, and when school started and when work started.
You really put the kids to bed at 6 o'clock, Courtney?
I was kidding. It's 7.
7:15. I swear. Let's hit these relational and emotional needs that you guys talk about. I've heard you mention them several times. The way that I think of this, and I'm curious. I mean, you've got like 30 laid out there, and it's kind of like the 5 love languages. If you've heard of some of that material, relational and emotional needs, and kind of understanding the needs of your partner. I want to go there next. So tickle your brain to think of like, what are some of these things? Before we do, there's a couple things I want to point out though. I mean, one, those love languages and those emotional needs and these things that therapists will fall on a lot, because that's a big focus of ours too. I really see them a lot of times as falling into the perspectives of, are you an engulfment-based person? Well, that's going to affect how you experience what those needs are. Are you an abandonment-based person? Because if you're really gaining safety by being close, that's going to be very different needs than if you're gaining safety by being distant. Like if I'm an engulfment person, dude, I need that time alone, baby, right? Not in my face. So how do you manage that on these relational and emotional needs is what I'm curious about. What are these 30? How am I supposed to remember 30, Craig?
We're not going to go through all of them.
Yeah.
We don't have them all memorized.
Well, what are they? What are some of the highlights? What do you kind of help people guide through figuring out what is this with my spouse or myself for that matter?
Yeah. So basically your top 3 can change in any given season depending on what's going on in your life, how old you are, what you're going through, things like that. But typically your top 3 are going to be the ones that either you missed in your formative years that were not provided for you, or they're going to be ones that you received by 1, 2 parents, your grandparents, everything. And so you know love through those needs. You feel love, you feel cared for. And so, for example,
so pause right there. That's cool. So what I hear you say is, generally speaking, you'll see one or the other popping out with people. One, the things that you really didn't get, you really kind of wanted, you pined for, or things that you really did get. And that tells you, well, I expect this from my spouse because, I mean, my mommy gave it to me, my daddy gave it to me, right? So why aren't you? So it could go either way.
Exactly. Yeah. And a good example is for me, usually my top need, not during COVID, but usually my top need is attention, which means enter my world, really know me. And that stems from having a dad who entered my world, played board games with me, went to my tennis matches, and really knew who I was. And so that to me, I felt love. And so when I grew up, I was seeking that kind of attention need, meaning someone please enter my world and really know me. And then I knew that I was loved. And so Mark knows that if I'm feeling a little out of whack, he pulls out, the Scrabble game or he pulls out a card game, and he knows that if I enter her world and play these games, she'll feel better.
And for the record, never play Scrabble with an author and an editor because
Craig, that right there, brother, is a challenge levied. Can anyone say words with friends? I'm a glutton for pain. That would be fun, wouldn't it? We should do that. Yeah. Do you ever win, Mark?
No. So she is the word person. I am the numbers person. So depending on what game we play, one of us definitely has the advantage. And usually it's word games.
Oh, so you got to pull out the Sudoku puzzle, man.
Oh, yeah, no, I'd be all over that.
Yeah, Sudoku, that rocks. All right, right here, we're about 3/4 of the way through, and I want to point out to the audience, right? We're talking about these different things that are really cool, and they sound nice, And boy, I tell you, Craig, Mark and Courtney just seem like they've got it together. They got this down, right? I mean, this is easy stuff. Can you hear, Craig, my sarcasm?
Can you hear us laughing?
Sounds like you're right, but I can definitely some sarcasm there.
Has this always been that way? And how, in the reality of all of this, can you speak to, like, how did you get here with some of these things that you clearly implement, A, and B, is it really that easy from day to day? And sometimes, honestly, from moment to moment.
Yeah, so...
It took practice of understanding that when we get into conflict, it took practice to hit the pause button, take a step back and say, okay, what need of his is being missed that is coming out? Like, basically we have emotional cups, right? And throughout the day, as we hit disappointments or missed expectations or have these scary feelings, our cup starts filling up. And when it gets to the top, it's going to spill out. And so when if one of us starts spilling out, we've learned through practice how to take a step back and say, what need is being missed and how can we minister to that rather than react to their behavior that's spilling out? But we were trained.
Yeah, and we're and we'll be the first. Well, I'll be the first to admit, like I did marriage really bad for the first 13 and a half years of our marriage. So I mean, so a lot of what we've learned, it's because we needed to learn it, because we've joked around that driver's ed, or to get a driver's license you need to take a class, but like to get married, like there's no relational class anymore.
Oh, here, bro. I mean, absolutely.
How to do this well,
right?
People only take that class when they're at each other's throats and like nothing is working, which you probably know better than anyone.
Listen, I like to tell people it's funny because people will come to marital counseling when it's bottom of the ninth inning, you're down by 7 runs, the back count is 3-1, and you're looking at me.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So, Mark, was there like a point where you said you did the first 13 years bad? Was there some kind of awakening moment or a rock bottom kind of moment, or what happened there to make you realize, hey, I've been doing this wrong for 13 years?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a wake up moment that I realized, look, I need some help here, because I don't know what's going on, and a lot of it was through the first 13 years was pride on my part of not wanting to either ask for help. Well, admit that I didn't know what I was doing, because clearly everyone, when you get married, you know exactly what you're getting into. There's no learning through marriage at all.
Sarcasm again.
There we go. And so it was realizing and admitting, okay, I don't have this all together, and then 2, being able to say, okay, I need some help because this is not turning out the way I thought it was. I mean, coming into marriage, my mentors, they're like, oh, marriage is great. It's great being married. And I got 10 years in, I'm like, all right, it's good, but like, if it's supposed to be great, I'm doing something wrong, because
they were wrong. Don't do it. Yeah. You get all these jokes, right? Movies are made from that.
Exactly.
We definitely had a lot of seasons of ships passing the night or feeling like roommates. Mm-hmm. And then we actually had a marriage crisis at that 13-year mark that helped us move over the hump of, okay, we need to learn some of this stuff. And once we learned it, it made so much sense, and it helped us so much that we couldn't help but want to help others. And
I'm going to foreshadow a little bit, if it's okay, because we've already talked about it, I think, Courtney, right? Yeah. So we just had our first repeat guest. Well, definitely listening audience, these guys are going to be a repeat guest at some point down the road. So we're going to actually probably be able to go into that, because you can check it out in, by the way, I didn't highlight it. Did I say that she's an editor, Craig?
Yeah, you did a couple times.
Did I say also that she's an author?
You did.
Oh, I did?
You did.
I don't think I did.
You did. Pretty sure you did.
Clay Jar Cracked is the book that we're talking about. So we're definitely going to have you guys on, again, to talk about that, because my point here in this little section here is like, listen, people put me on a pedestal as a therapist, and let me tell you, I can blow it out of the water for the airwaves across the world right now. Like, from day to day to day, like, I don't care how well you think you know this stuff and what training you went through. Like, guys, I suck at this stuff. And you know why? At times it's because the intensity of your amygdala. I mean, think about this, Mark. Your amygdala is your fear center of your body, and it gets triggered. Oft used word, but it's really true. You literally have cortisone and adrenaline and hormones of all sorts coursing through your body when you get worked up, to the point that you could pick up a car when somebody's trapped underneath of it, right? That's the kind of intensity that we're talking about when we're talking about managing our emotion. You think anybody's going to be really perfect at that?
No.
Try to think about what my partner's emotional needs are and how to kind of communicate and talk and, be loving. Yeah, I'm willing to pick up a car, right? This is hard. Yeah.
Great thing is, no, we're not perfect. And no, we often start getting into conflict and voices start raising, but we're now faster at recognizing it's happening and hitting that pause button and saying, okay, this isn't about what we think this is about.
And that's a key right there. I try in therapy with people and with myself to really get that internal recognition, because we're responsible unto and for ourselves. And if you're not good at that, then you're going to have a hard time with any of these types of dimensions that we're talking about in a marriage.
Yeah. And I think a perfect example of that is, pre-COVID, if I, walk in the house after work and, am short-tempered and, Court just says hi and I snap at her. I mean, she's learned that, okay, it's not good to snap back.
Doesn't work.
Let's pause and say, all right, clearly he's not mad at me. He's taking it out on me because I'm the closest person around, but something happened at work. And now she's looking at, okay, something happened to my spouse at work that has upset him this much. I want to help him through that, or, help be a sounding board, let him vent. And so immediately and completely changes that dynamic of, instead of her snapping back and then it just escalates and escalates, it turns into a partnership. And how can I serve you? And really goes back to, how can I help you feel less alone? Because clearly you feel alone right now and you're angry and you're snapping. So how can I enter your world and support you as a spouse?
Yeah, and I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but, from looking at it from an abandonment and an engulfment standpoint, because those are primary insecurities, you really have to kind of learn, which means, by the way, very purposeful connection in talking about these things when you're calm. You have to learn what that person might be looking for. Of course, that person can actually say what they're looking for, because sometimes that's going to be, hey, I come home, I just bit your head off, and what's best for me right now is I need to be alone, right? Does that not go contrary to what you would think? You're feeling alone. Let me get close to you. Well, no, wait a minute, right? What do you think?
Yeah. We've learned a great question to ask is, I can see that you are fill in the blank. Is there, what can I do, or what do you need, or what, to ask questions rather than react to that behavior.
Yeah. And for me, my normal reaction is, look, no, like you, I want to be alone. Just like, don't talk to me. Let me go in the bedroom. Let me change clothes. Give me 5-10 minutes more to cool down. Cause clearly the 30-minute drive home didn't do enough. So, give me a few more minutes, but
Oh, no. Let me be clear, Mark. For me personally, Chris Gazdick, don't leave me alone. Right? I want to connect and talk, and I'm on Courtney's side in that regard. Let's go play Parcheesi, man.
Let me ask you guys something along those same lines. So as you're teaching couples, I guess there's also some level of individual development there, because if you come in and snap at your spouse, they have to have some emotional control, to be able not to lash back out and to realize that, hey, he's not mad at me. He's mad at something else. Let me figure out what it is. My initial reaction is to say, well, hey, screw you too, pal, whatever, So I guess there's some level of individual growth that has to occur too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when we start working with couples, we start with identifying that what Court talked about, this emotional cup, and just that idea that, this cup gets filled up throughout the day, and eventually it's going to overflow, and it's going to overflow through, for me, it's, it's snapping, it's escape, it's just avoiding as much as I can. So Court knows when she sees that, all right, again, there's something more going on here. And so when we work with couples, the first thing is, look, let's get each of you individually to recognize these are kind of your tells. And when these happen, for you yourself, realize, okay, realize it for what it's worth.
And actually we take couples through this curriculum that also shows that when you get married, you're bringing your own cups, half full into the relationship. So you're not marrying someone with an empty cup, emotional cup. They're bringing stuff from childhood into the marriage. They're bringing stuff from adolescence, from before they met you. And so you're both imperfect people coming together. And once they recognize you take responsibility for your own emotional cup, then it's easy to use that language when you're communicating during conversation night on Wednesdays.
And that's a cool, and I like the way you ended that, Courtney, because the reality of it is there are some little things and tips and tricks and purposeful, intentional things that you can do, and talk to your therapist is a great way to go, or, there's information out there but, just being creative with each other and discussing and talking, you can create some of that. Someone recently told me that they have a fun little texting game that they play where they have every day is a different rule. Like you can't capitalize anything. And if you say anything with a W, you have to capitalize W. Guess what day that would be on? It's just fun little things that you can do in being purposeful about that sort of thing. So I think I'm aware of the time ticking off. Craig, if you can help me with the timer, I'm curious how much time we've been going because I didn't start my stop clock this time. I want to kind of hit the faith thing really quick and maybe just like a couple, literally like 2.5 minutes on that. And then I want to end up on the dreaming part because those were two really important parts, or the last one was a really important part. So you talk about, can you tell me that, can you tell Craig that they coached me along this particular episode? I've been prepared and prepped. The Holy Trinity. Okay. I don't know if we're going to figure that thing out tonight. You got the Father, you got the Son, you got the Holy Spirit, you got like this one entity, 3 parts thing. Like, what is that? In much the same mind, right? You've got this, we're married now. We're not individuals. We've become one. Wait a minute. I'm independent. I'm an individual. No, you're not. You're a part of me. What do you mean I'm part of me? This is a crazy way that people think. Like, it's scary to think in the faith-based way, right? The two are becoming one in a holy sacrament of marriage, or if not a religion component, in a legal entity. How does that, wow, right?
Yeah, like you said, it's a big mystery, and that's pretty much all there is to say about that. No, I'm just kidding. No, our feeling is when two become one, so you each have individual purposes, right? We believe that we're put here for a purpose, and we each have our individual purposes, or individual personalities, or individual giftings and talents, and things like that. But then we also have, once you get married and two become one, you have a purpose for your marriage. And when you discover that purpose, that's when intimacy really grows, because you're on the same page. You're working towards something that we feel is a divine reason why you two are together. And so that really fuels camaraderie and goal setting and being on the same page.
Wow. That's an interesting thing to think about. I've heard people talk about finding your purpose and all that stuff for years, but I've never heard anybody think about it or talk about it in terms of what is the purpose of us as a married couple.
Yeah, because when we envision it, when two become one, so you now have both of your strengths, both of your giftings, both of your personalities to do something amazing. And so it might be related to parenting. It might be related to a ministry. It might be related to volunteer work. It might be related to opening a business or adoption or fostering, whatever. It could be a million different things. And for us, we would not have picked it, but for us, it's helping other married couples.
What do you mean you wouldn't have picked it? What do you mean by that?
It's hard.
Yeah, it is. I can attest to that. Sometimes, you took me back to a moment where I'm sitting in a therapy session. It's been years ago now, so I'm not breaking confidence. I mean, it's been many years now, but I was actually pretty green and new at doing this. And I mean, Courtney, you took me to this moment where this couple's in my office and they're talking and they kind of get heated, and he says something and she says something and he says something back, and she just explodes saying a lot of somethings, runs out of the room, slams the door. He looks at me. He's like, well, that was cool, man. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're doing some stuff. Do you think you could keep her in the room next time? I was just like, wow. I mean, it just steamrolled over me. It's tough.
I say we wouldn't have picked it because the catalyst of what we're doing was started in pain. Like, it started after a crisis in our own marriage. So that was my point. I mean, we have both of our children, again, like you mentioned, were adopted. We thought our, marriage purpose was going to be or something around that. But when our marriage fell apart 13 years ago and it was rebuilt and it's now stronger than it was before, we realized that that's something that other couples can experience as well.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
It's just to help you foreshadow, the future podcast. So we're looking forward to that one.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is definitely on the docket. So the listening audience is like, oh, Marc and Courtney Donelson, that sounds like drama. I can't wait, man. Okay, let's close in and begin taxiing in for a landing here. I want to think about, and as we're ending, we have, minutes left and stuff for sure. So no total rush, but just to train our brains to dial in here, to dream. My take on this idea that you guys seem to present as a part of your workshops and stuff, dreaming together, you had said, and, I feel like, that's a primary goal, in a lot of marriage counseling sessions as well, insofar as developing, like if you pull it all together, right? Like understanding yourself, realizing what dimension in emotion focused therapy you are on, what your emotional needs are, and what your spouse's needs are in that perspective, especially figuring out how to be seen and see yourself as a couple. And then you're just talking about, the idea of, the last thing, and then pulling all that in together in the vision of what you said, the purpose together in the two becoming one, pulling all that together in so far as where are we going, right? Like, what are we doing? What are we dreaming big for? The anticipation of the future really very much creates an experience together in the here and now, so that the here and now isn't so big, right? Like if you're hoping and dreaming in the here and now, the stress, the fear that I'm feeling right now, we're going there and it's okay. We'll get there, right? Like that's the way I see, this idea of dreams and planning and whatnot in therapy anyway. How do you guys see all that with dreaming?
When we came out of our crisis, and we had read a book that recommended writing out all of your big, huge, they call them God-sized dreams that you want to accomplish together. And in this book, there were, 250 dreams that this author and his wife had put together. And we thought, well, that's a lot.
Let me just get to one, right?
Yeah, if we can get to one. But we sat down and we kind of categorized them. We have these financial dreams. We have these travel dreams. We have these parenting dreams. We have these, ministry dreams. And so when we started listing them specifically, well, what do you want to do in your life? And what I would love to do this with you in life. When we listed them out, we had how many?
It was well over 100.
Yeah, it was well over 100.
Holy mackerel. Really?
That was several years ago. And I can say when we keep that in the forefront, we've accomplished a half dozen of them. And when you are able to cross
which means we only have 94 to go. But
I thought she misspoke there for a second, to be honest with you. To be straight and full, truthful and transparency, I thought she misspoke.
I'm talking big things.
Okay. Well, life is on.
Yeah.
One thing that we realized is, when you first get married or you're leading up to your wedding and you first get married, you're full of hopes and you're full of dreams of, hey, what's this marriage going to be like? And then, you hit that 10-year or that decade, that lost decade. And you come
right.
out, okay, we don't have any, I just want to get through tomorrow. Like that, my dream today is just to get to bed tonight. And you lose that fun. Wait
a minute, I got to stop on that quote. That is awesome. My dream today after the lost decade is to get to bed tonight. Life feels that way though, doesn't it sometimes?
Absolutely. And so for us, that really helped us with, okay, there is hope. Like what are some of those fun things that we want to be able to do? And it allowed us to just, contextualize things differently and look at things differently and look at opportunities differently, and to be able to say, oh, like that's cool. We can go do that. And if these are things we want to do, let's work towards them. And it lifts you out of that. Okay, who's making dinner tonight, and what kid are you putting to bed, and it gives you kind of that hopes and dreams and that fun back in your marriage a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bringing it back, like you say. I mean, people kind of talk about that idea of, I think people get really scared, Mark, to where you took my brain is where, and I can easily feel that way myself a lot of times. You get into that lost decade, you get into all these multiple roles that you have in life, all these pressure points, and then you throw a major drama thing in for good measure, and that can represent, the death of a parent or, a cancer diagnosis or any number of life related challenges. We all have so many different ones of them that you just get downtrodden and beaten down, and you kind of feel like, I'm not in love. I'm not able to function. I don't, sometimes you don't love and care about yourself. It's like, you get so beaten down. I feel like I see people when they're looking at me in my therapy office that they don't believe it's possible to restart that, to get that going again. And sometimes you have to do it again and again and again and again and again and again and many times over again, right?
Yeah. And the reality is when you accomplish something like that, like a big dream, like for example, we always had the dream of building a modern house. It's just, we like the style. It's nothing you see around here. We're in North Carolina, but we just had that dream. And so we looked at each other one day and we're like, why not now? And like, let's do this. And so 2 years ago we finished, and we've been living in our ultra modern house in the middle of Charlotte, North Carolina for 2 years. But it's something that we accomplished together. And when you have those accomplishments that you've done together, it brings you closer. It builds that intimacy. Yeah,
that's cool. It's a teammate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Absolute teammate. Craig, why don't you got any questions or thoughts? Sum us up a little bit. What have you been hearing? I like to do that, guys, in his brain, as far as what you're hearing us talk about and how this is playing out in your mind. And then we need to taxi in.
I think it's been a great conversation. It's, marriage is a tough thing, and I commend you guys for staying together and then helping other people. I think it's great. I think it's great.
So, guys, one of the things I kind of started a tradition of, and I got to be careful. I kind of screw this up with Mr. Martin. Hope you're still listening, Tom. It was great to talk to him. But when I started to do this thing that I like doing when people are sharing personally, I like to do a high five. Right? Because, it's really hard. I don't care if you're a presenter, if you're a therapist, if you're a superstar consultant, when you're talking about these things, it's kind of like, whoa, let's have a meeting before this, ma'am, honey, before you say that, or don't go there, or like, oh, it's scary, right? It's every single time you get an energy about it. So here, instead of doing a high five, I want to do a clap here in a second when I count to 3, because that to me, that signifies like high five, good job. And I appreciate you guys for what you're willing to do, the work that you're doing, your transparency today. And we're definitely going to have you on the show. So you ready for this on 3? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Craig, why don't you guys want to sum us up? Did we get it out there where these people can find you? How can they get to your seminars, your weekends and that sort of thing?
Well, we just finished up. We do that annually, a small group in our house annually, and we just finished that up for this year. But if they go out to my website, they can certainly email us through that, which is yourvocem.com, and that's YOURVOCEM.
M as in my Mary?
Yes.
Correct.
I was trying to think of something really funny right there, but it just bombed. All right. Anything that we missed, guys, that you want to highlight or focus on?
I don't think so. We just really appreciate you having us on, and also just appreciate the podcast that you all do for everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This was great. I really appreciate it.
Glad to have you guys. Pleasure to meet you.
You too.
Okay, why don't you take us out of here, and we'll get to the next show idea.
Okay. Yeah. Through a Therapist Eyes is where you can find out more about me and Chris and the show. We've got each show online there on the website. You can also find us on every podcast platform. We've been kind of playing around with YouTube some, so there might be some video out there. And you can also find links to our social media on the website. And,
we're going to perfect YouTube Live a little bit too. I kind of cut it off way early because I couldn't hear the guests and stuff. We're playing around with that too. So some neat things.
Cool.
We're going to sound off next time a little bit. Next week, we're going to have a show. We're going to sound off on, it'll be a short one, but it'll be about the concern with kids in the COVID environment and also sports, man. We'll talk about sports and mental health in the COVID environment. That sound interesting?
It does. Cool.
All right, guys. We'll see you all next week.